We are going to be setting up Stripe payment in our React Native Expo application, which is going to give us the ability for us to bill our customers. So this, we have here a product details page, and right here we can add a quantity and also add an item to cart. And then we can come over to the cart page and want to bill our customers, want to charge them for this item. And over here we have this checkout button. The user can press on this button, which is going to open up the Stripe form for the user to go and make payment. So this over here, you see we already have a card that is saved. So we have a Stripe customer, or you can add new card credentials, or you can just go with this card you have here and pay or bill the user. So over here we have this 590 USD, so we can go on and process this payment. You see payment successful. And if you come over to your Stripe dashboard, you just need to refresh your Stripe dashboard and you're going to see the 590 transaction over here on your Stripe dashboard for payment. So for this, we're going to be creating a Stripe customer so that Stripe can be able to keep track of the customer. We see the payment here. And if you go right into the transaction, you would see that Stripe knows this customer because we are creating a Stripe customer over here, and you can see the customer email and get to know more about the user that initiated this transaction. So this is good. Over time, you want to know how much a user has spent on your application. You can find such transaction details here. So this is what we're going to be doing, and it's important that I say that this is part of my full stack application development right here on YouTube. So please do check it out if you want to know how you can build full stack React Native mobile applications with Expo. And let me not forget to mention, we do have a customized administration panel with Next.js fully built. So the link is going to be in the description, but for the purpose of this video, we're just going to see how we can integrate payment in our React Native Expo application. So without further ado, let's get started. Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where we're going to be setting up Supabase on our local machine. And the biggest benefit for doing this is the ability to test locally, and once we certify everything is good, we can now deploy our changes. Okay, so what are we going to be doing, or why are we doing this specifically? We are doing this for Edge function, which is going to help us for payments actually. So, and to actually continue with the steps that we're going to be doing, you need to have Docker installed on your machine. But if you don't have Docker, you can try to install. If for some reason you can't install Docker on your machine, no worries. We can still go through, but you might not just have the ability to test your application. So that's the only downside. And without wasting any more time, now we're going to get started and come over to the documentation to see how we can have our local development for Supabase. So here we have the local development section. And we need to scroll down to see the different steps or command. The first thing is to log into the Supabase CLI. We can either use the terminal using Supabase login, or we can use npx. So I'm going to be using npx. Just copy this, come right here and paste this in. And give this a second. It's going to tell you to hit enter, and it's going to log you in automatically with the token it's going to generate. And once you're being logged in, you can now close this. So what's the next step? The next step is to initialize your project. You need to create a new folder and all of that. And we already have Git in our project, so that's cool. The next step is to start Supabase service, and we have to do this with the Supabase init, which is going to initialize Supabase and give us the configuration to help us to develop locally. So copy this command. I'm going to clear, and I'm going to prefix npx and paste it in. Now I'll just hit no twice, and it's done. So if you open up your Explorer here, you will see you have a new Supabase folder which contains the configurations here. So that's what you get with the init command. Now let's continue, and the next step is to link our application. For that, I'm just going to command F and search for link right here in the documentation, and you'll come over to this link your project section. And you see we need to use the Supabase link, which is going to associate your project with your remote project. Okay, so let's copy the link command here, and you can paste it right inside your VS Code. And once you have it, we can come over to our remote Supabase And right here, let's come over to the project settings so that we can take our project ID. So it's actually a ref ID here, and I'm going to expand and just copy this. Once you have it copied, just paste it right in here and hit enter to execute. And this is going to link your Supabase project with what you have remote. For your Supabase dashboard, in case you don't have it, if you come over here to the configuration section, database, and you scroll further down, you would see a section for database password. So right here, reset your database, generate a new password and copy it. You can do this if you don't know your password or if you've forgotten it. So once the reset is done, paste the new password here. Actually, you have to do this once. You would not see the password, so don't feel like you didn't paste. And then hit enter to execute. Now this is going to connect to your remote database, and you see here we get the finished Supabase link. Let's come back here, and the next thing we need to do is to pull our changes. I don't see it, so I'll also command F and search for link because that was the next command. Yeah, so this command, Supabase db pull. Make sure you copy it and come back to the VS Code. It's going to pull the changes from the remote. I'm just going to clear, and then I'm going to npx Supabase db pull. Now it's going to connect to remote database, and you see here it's dumping the schema from the remote database. Basically, it just helps to give you some migrations. Your changes that you have on your remote, it tries to pull it right here into your local development. And you see here, you have this Supabase /migrations that is now populated with a migration, and it gives it this name that starts with a timestamp. And you see this migration captures any changes required for your local development to match the schema of your remote Supabase project. And you review, and once you review and you're happy, you can apply the changes. And to apply the changes, we can use the Supabase migration up, but in this case, we're going to be using the Supabase db reset. So this process could take some time, and you just have to be patient enough with it. And once it is done, then we can proceed with the next step. Okay, yes, so it's done for me. I'm going to hit Y to continue here and just hit Y and say yes. And now you see here it has finished the Supabase db pull. You can have a look at the file actually. And if you come over to your Explorer, and here right inside Supabase, you have the migration and you see the timestamp remote schema.sql. Now in here, you would see all our functions, all our tables, everything that we have written so far. You see, we even have the decrement product quantity, our RPC call, everything is here. But if we search for the trigger, so if you just do Command F or Control F, you would see here we have the function that returns the trigger, but we don't actually have the trigger here. Now we're going to be doing that manually. So come back to your Supabase project, and right here to the SQL editor, we wrote out this trigger previously. So copy it, and you're going to paste it right in here. And if you don't paste this, you know that you'll not be able to create a new user. We have gone through this in the past. So I'll just leave a comment here so that you would know what it is doing. We can say on auth user insert, create a new user in the public schema. I'll just go with this suggestion, but most importantly, paste this right in here and save the file. Now we have saved or edited this file. We need to rebuild, or I would say regenerate. So we need to run this Supabase db reset command and open up your terminal and npx Supabase db reset. Oh yeah, so we need to first of all run the Supabase start command. For that, I'll open a new terminal here and run the npx Supabase db start command. And once you run the command here, you're just going to give it a second because this is going to take some time, especially if you're running for the first time, because over here we see it's starting up the database. This npx Supabase start command takes some time because then it uses Docker. As I said initially, it has different containers that it starts to run. It's setting up our initial schema, and you see all of these because it uses Docker. I can't overemphasize on that. So you just have to be patient. And actually, if you check the documentation where we have the start command, I think we saw it further up here somewhere. Yeah, so here you see here that the start command uses Docker to start the Supabase services. And most importantly, this command may take a while to run if this is the first time using the CLI. And if you come down, once it is done, we should expect an output that looks like this, which is going to contain our API key, our anon key. And if you want to stop, you can use the Supabase stop command and stop your local database. Okay, so this is it. Could take some time. What's going to happen is I'm not going to waste your time and watch all of these, just run and waste our time. I'm just going to actually skip this, and once it is done, then I will come back and we can continue. So let me just fast forward through. Okay, so now it is done for me and I am seeing the output right here. You see right here the API URL is started the Supabase local development. And apart from the API URL, we also have some other URLs here. We have the anon key, we have the service role, and all of these. Now we can come back here and rerun the reset command. So npx supabase db reset is resetting our local database, and then it recreates the database. This, I don't expect it to take much of a time, but let's see if it takes too much time. And now it is setting up our initial schema. And let's wait for this. And after setting up our initial schema, I don't want to fast forward. Yeah. And then it is setting our globals from rows.sql. And then it is applying the migration from our timestamp remote schema.sql. And then it seeds the SQL. And now it has finished the Supabase reset on the main branch. So now we're going to come back here, and here let's copy where we have access to the anon key and where we also have our API URL. Let's come back to our source folder where we have our Supabase so that we can run this locally. So right here in the lib folder, Supabase, right at the top of this file, that's where we have our Supabase anon key and our Supabase secret key. So right here, our Supabase URL. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to duplicate this and comment it out. No worries, in the next video, we're going to see the case of environment variables. And for the Supabase URL and anon key, let's copy it from here. The Supabase URL is this your API URL. So copy this API URL here and come back here. Actually, oops, I'm just going to copy the API URL. And here where you have your Supabase URL, you just update it to this. And for the Supabase anon key, if you scroll down, you have your anon key right here. So what you can do is to also copy this your anon key, and once you've got it copied, you can come right here and paste it in. So now we can start the application running on with our Supabase running on our local machine. Let's have our npx supabase start status, and with this status you can get back the keys in case you for some reason you misplaced it. So now let's npx start to start our application and wait for a second, and then I'm going to hit on I to start it up on the iOS simulator. So wait a second, and here is application. I'm just going to reset, and once the application loads, we shouldn't have any product, we shouldn't have any order, we shouldn't have any user, because this is on our local machine we are connecting to and we haven't created any yet. So we shouldn't have any of those, or we shouldn't have any field in our table. We should just have an empty schema. No worries, we're going to see the schema studio in a second. And here you see our application is up and running, no errors. And if you come back here to the other terminal where you have these settings, you see right here you have the studio URL. So all you can do is to copy this studio URL. Let's visit it. This is where we have access to our Supabase studio, our Supabase project locally. Now, this isn't supabase.com, as you can see. This is your local machine on localhost. Here you have Supabase running on your machine. Over here in the table editor, you're going to see the different tables. You can inspect the user table. You see we don't have any user, and that's why we had to create that trigger and update our schema. Over here in the database, if you come here and you check the triggers, you see you don't have any trigger, but if you check the authentication schema here, you see we have this on-auth user created trigger, which is going to be called for us when we create a new user. So you can play around with this. We're going to be trying things out. We're going to try to authenticate new users right from our mobile application. And if we are able to create a new user, then we should see the user update here. And this is going to give us the platform for us to create our Edge function and test our Edge function locally. So I implore you to try to have Supabase running on your local machine. It's going to just help. Try to install Docker. But if you can't, again, no worries. We're going to be going through everything together. So what do we have in our application? We have our application running locally here. So that's our Supabase project. But let's do some cleanup because we have our URL, anon key, all of them here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to copy everything because we want to have them in environment variables. So come here and in the root of your project, create a new file called .env. Oops, let me fix this typo. It should be .env without any quotes like this. Now this new file, you see it is untracked. So let's check out git ignore here. And I will just look for env and we have it here. So if you have it, what you can do is to just reload. So just come here, refresh so that it's no longer untracked. And if it's still showing untracked, then that means we can come back in our git ignore and just add .env. We want to make sure it is grayed out so that our keys, yeah, you see now it is grayed out. So our keys are not pushed. That means GitHub isn't keeping track of this file. So now we are here pasting everything. And let's do an update. So the Supabase URL, we need to prefix expo underscore public. So expo underscore public. Expo gives us a helpful way of handling environment variables. And then we'll say underscore Supabase underscore URL and then says equal to this. So Supabase underscore URL is equal to this, which is our remote URL. And then we can get rid of the semicolon and the quote. We can do the same for the anon key. So I'll just copy the expo underscore public and use here like this and then add the underscore. And this is for our anon key. Again, this is for our local Supabase anon key. So expo public Supabase anon underscore key and then equal to, I'll get rid of the quotes and also the spacing and do the same for the end. Get rid of the quote and the semicolon at the end. Now for, let's copy it because it's the same key. So copy it and use the same value here for the remote URL. And let's not forget our equal to just right here. And the same for the anon key. Let's copy and update here. Have our equal to and get rid of the quote at the end. Okay, so we're going to comment out the one for the remote because currently we are working in development. So we want to use the development Supabase keys. And after this, we are going to come over to the supabase.ts so that we can load these environment variables. We no longer want to hard code them there. So let's start with the Supabase URL. To bring it here, we need to make use of the process.env. And then the expo public Supabase URL. And also we can do the same for the anon key. So it is process.env expo public. You can always double check. Okay, come over to the env, just copy and paste to make sure that it matches here. Okay, and then we can also get rid of this one. No need to have it here again. And we have an error. So the reason why we have an error, if we double check here, you see, because it's coming from the env, it could be string or undefined. Let's make Typescript happy. Let's just add an exclamation at the back to tell Typescript to relax. We know that we are going to add it there. Or you can use invariant. Was it an invariant? Not quite sure. So now you see our application isn't running. Let us quit and make sure that we npm start our application. And then I'm going to use I to start it on iOS. Now, this is going to start our local development application from Supabase. I'll just reload this. And yeah, because that's the value that we have in our env, we have the value for our local Supabase project. So now we see our application, it is up and running. We are going to test our application next to make sure everything is working. Hello everyone. So this is the current state of our application. We have Supabase running locally. Now we want to discuss to Stripe server side to server side. We don't want to do client side things. And for that, we are going to be using Edge functions. So come right here to the documentation, the overview section in the Edge functions sections. We're going to know more about Edge functions here. And you see that these are globally distributed TypeScript functions. So these are server-side TypeScript functions that are distributed globally at the edge. At the edge means close to your users. And they can be useful for listening to webhooks or for integrating third-party libraries in your Supabase project. And that's our use case, right? We want to integrate Stripe right into our project, and we have to use Edge function. So come over to the Get Started guide here. And this is going to take you to the documentation. The first thing we need to do is to initialize a project, Stripe Supabase init. We have done that. Now we're going to create an Edge function, and this is the command. So we're going to run the Supabase functions new, and then the name of the function. So let's go over to our IDE, open up your terminal, and let's run the command. So npx Supabase functions, and don't forget the S. So functions is easy to overlook, new, and then I'll give it stripe-checkout for the name, and then let's execute. Okay, so this is going to be creating a new function at this path, the Supabase functions stripe checkout. Let's take a look at it here. We have the functions, and right here if we expand, you see the stripe checkout. This is the name of our function, and this is the index. This function is Deno server-side language. Might look familiar, might not look familiar. We also see it right here at the top that this is Deno, and this is how it works. The importation, this is how the import works. We just have a console.log here, the boilerplate, and we have the Deno server. We return the response, and it can also be invoked locally here, and this is the core command that we can use to invoke this locally. The next step is to set up a Stripe account, because we're going to need some keys to proceed. So come over to your Stripe or to stripe.com and do authenticate yourself. Maybe create an account if you don't have one already, please. But if you do, let's try to log in. And here I'm just going to provide my credentials, just skip it. And then I'm also going to confirm my email. And once you have authorized yourself, you should be redirected over to your Stripe dashboard. And right here in your Stripe dashboard, you should be in test mode by default. If you're not in test mode, you want to be in test mode to try things out, okay? Until you register your business, then you can provide the required documents to Stripe and you can go out of test mode. But if we scroll further down here, we'll see what we're looking for. So our publishable key and our secret key. Let's copy the publishable key. And last time out, we did set up our environment variable. So let's come to the env here and create the secret key and publishable key. And to do that, for the Stripe secret, we'll just have stripe_secret_key. And you see this isn't prefixed with the expo public. And that's because this is a server-side one. We don't want it to be part of the build bundle. And the next is the stripe_publishable_key. And we're going to get that right from the dashboard here. So do copy actually I did flip the order. So let me copy and paste. This is meant to be publishable key. And let me rename this to be secret key. So make sure you don't flip the order as I did here. So copy the secret key and come back to the application and use it right here. And then you can save. Okay, so what are we going to be doing next? Let's take a look at the function that got created. So we're going to come back to the function Stripe checkout, the index. So right here, let's just take a look at this. So as we've said, this is Deno. And right here, we have this await request.json. It's trying to destructure the name, but let's update it to maybe total amount, because that's what we're going to be sending. We're going to be sending the amount. So I'm just going to call it total amount. And next we have this data here, but let's go right on top of it and create the payment intent, because that's what we want to do. We're not checking out now, we're just creating a payment intent. So const payment intent is going to be equal to await stripe.payment intents dot create. So make sure you don't miss it, it's intent. But we have an issue, we don't have Stripe loaded here. Now to get Stripe, let's come back to the browser, and then I'm going to show you how we can import Stripe just like this. So right here, I will quickly Google search for Stripe npm, and right here in the documentation, I want to look for a section for Deno so that we can see how it works. I can even command F or control F and just search for Deno, and here it is, the usage with Deno. And you see here, you just need to install or import like this. It doesn't really install, so you just import it like this, and you can use in your project. And right here we also have a guide to GitHub. If you come right here, you see the checkout integration, you see the main.js, and you see how it was imported here with also the version number. So we can do the same. We can paste this in, and let's come back to documentation and take the version number here, and let's use it in our project. But is this actually the latest version? Let's verify. Let's come back here, and let's come back to the npm. Yeah, so right here, and if we check the versions, so you have 645, and you see the latest version is 16.10.0. so copy this, or you can use it if you're not checking and just type it out here, or you paste right in here the version, so 16.10.0. so now we have Stripe. To continue to load Stripe, we're going to need the documentation once more to see how it is done. So right here, let's go back to the guide that we were using, the guide for Deno. I'm just going to go back and let me look for it, Deno here. So here, so let's come back to the GitHub to see how it was implemented here. Checkout integration, and here we have the main.js. So here you see that Stripe was loaded with this piece of code. So we need the same in our case. So we can just copy this, and we can now make use of it right inside of our project. So let's come back to our project, and right here at the top, we can make use of it. We can get rid of the console.log and paste the code here. So you see Stripe is trying to use Deno env.get Stripe API key. But in our case, what did we call it? We called it Stripe secret key. So copy this and use the Stripe secret key here. This is needed to fetch blah, 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 all of that. So just have an instruction there. And now we can create the payment intent with Stripe. Now, what does this payment intent need? It needs an amount, and it also needs a currency. And here we have auto completion, the amount, total amount that we are getting from the request. But for now, I'm going to hard code the amount, maybe 5,000, 4,000, any amount of your choice. This price actually is $40. So don't think it's $4,000 here. I'll just add the comment. So $40 here. And that's the way it works. And now, after this payment intent creation, next is the response. So we no longer need data. We're going to update data to be an object that is going to contain response. So let's update it. Let's have const, and then we're going to have the response, which we're going to send back to the client. And this response is going to be equal to this object where we have the payment, not the payment intent ID. We just call it payment intent. And the value is going to be coming from the payment intent response. So payment intent.client secret. Now we're also going to pass the public key. It's just a security measure and bring this in. But again, we didn't call it it's the publishable key, which is actually okay to hard code, but let's just send it as a response. It's just a security measure. And here we are sending back response and not data. All right, so far so good. If you come back here to the Supabase, let's see how we can call this function. So if you come further down, you see running edge functions locally. How can we call it? And we already have Supabase start up and running. So the next thing is to run the npx Supabase functions serve. And it's going to start a watcher. So keyword there, watcher, is going to keep running. So that's it. And now we can invoke the edge functions locally, the URL, JavaScript. So let's open up our terminal, and then we're going to clear. I'll just clear the terminal now and then run the npx and then Supabase and then functions and then serve. And I'll go with double hyphen env hyphen file because we want to load env and have the env here. And now the function name Stripe checkout. So here we have Stripe hyphen checkout. Like this, do go on and execute. So you see it's setting up the end functions runtime, and that's how Deno works. Then it goes on to download everything, and you see 7 functions on this URL here on our local machine. And here we have the function name, which is just replaced for us. So now we're going to try it. Let's copy this command that we have here. So you just need to copy everything to invoke it locally. We're not going to change anything, at least for now. So we're just going to copy everything, even though the data we send in, name, we will update it later. But let's copy everything. And right here, I will just open a new terminal window here so that we can invoke. And it asks me if I want to paste. I will say paste. Okay. Now, this is the function. You can inspect. You can also update here. You see, everything is actually fine. We have the correct headers being set, and you also have the Stripe checkout path. So to go on and execute this and wait a moment, and hopefully everything goes fine and we get at least some success response because we are sending back a successful response. Now you see it was successful. We get back an object with a payment intent. So this right here is the payment intent. That's what we're getting right here. But to know, again, this is a public key. So let's copy this and see if it matches what we have in our env, because we are currently sending it, and you see it matches here. So this is actually cool. It's successful. Now we're going to go one level up and get rid of this hard-coded amount we have here, so we can use that total amount and test this out again and be sure that, yeah, that everything is working fine and good. And we can just double check. We can also update the name to be the total amount, and the value. We can also have the value of 4,000 here for $40 as a string like this. Okay, so copy everything and paste it right here. All right, so execute. And for now, we can't tell if everything was successful, but if we come over here and you refresh your Supabase, your Stripe dashboard, just refresh your dashboard so that we can see the transactions to be sure that, hey, it's actually working. Now, if you come over here, you have your balance overview. I don't see much information here. So let's go back to the transactions section. And right here in the transaction section, give it a second for data to load. We should see our incoming transactions here. Exactly. And we see the transactions right in here. So 40 USD sent a couple of times. That's what we are seeing here. We can even try again with a different amount, maybe 50, to be sure that it's working. So right here, let's clear and let's try again. Here, let's update the amount rather than 40. Let's update it to 50 and send again. We see our response. And over here, you just need to refresh your Stripe dashboard. And once it refreshes, we should hopefully see 50 USD right here, and yes, we do. So we see everything is working fine and everything is working good. So what are we doing next? We're gonna do next. We have this function, but it's on our local machine. We need to deploy this function to the production, to our remote. And right here in the documentation, if you come over to this deploy to production section here, you would see the way you can deploy. We have done all of these, linking our project. So here you see Supabase functions deploy. Or better still, if you check down, you see you provide a function name. So let's copy this, come back to our application, and I will also clear, or maybe look for, yeah, so here, just clear and npx, paste in what we copied, and the function name is stripe-checkout. Now is the time for us to deploy this to our real Supabase remote, execute this, and if it's successful, we should get the URL to see the function. So now it's bundling the function, it's downloading dependency that it needs, and it's deploying. So here is it. You see that it's deployed the functions, and here you can even inspect in your deployment in your dashboard. So this is the URL. Let's copy it. And if you don't copy it, no worries. You can obviously come right here to your Supabase project and you'd still see it. So I'm just going to paste the URL here and execute. If you don't copy it, over here you see is the Edge functions section. You see the name, Stripe Checkout. And if you click on it, you see more information. You see the slug, you see the endpoint URL, and you see everything right here, which is super, super cool. So there you have it. We have written out this Edge function. We have also deployed it to our real remote, not our local development server for Supabase. We have it right here in our real remote. Now, this is just one step to integrating payment in your React Native application with Stripe. The next step we are going to be doing right here, we are going to continue just after this. This is just one step in receiving payments in your React Native application. We just create a payment intent. The next thing we are going to be working on is the payment form for the user. So let's continue working on that. Hello everyone and welcome. So we have deployed our Edge function, but we are missing one vital thing, because if you just come over to the function that we wrote out, so here in the Supabase functions, the index here, you will see we're trying to have access to two environment variables, the Stripe secret key and also the Stripe publishable key, and we're trying to read it from Deno env get. Now, if you come over to the documentation guide, here, the section for managing environment variables, you're going to see how you can read it. By default, the Edge function have access to these secrets. So the Supabase underscore URL, all of these here. So it doesn't have the one for Stripe, obviously. So we need to have our more like production secrets here. And the way you can do this is two ways. So whichever way you want to do, you need to use the Supabase secret set. But the first way, if you have an env file you want to set, so you're going to use this flag and then the file. But you can also do this individually using the Supabase secret set, which is the second option here. So this is the option we're going to be going with. So copy this here and come back to the application, open up your terminal, and with npx, you can paste it here. Now, the first one is this Stripe secret key here. So you can paste it. And then the value is going to come from the env file. So let's open up our env and copy the Stripe secret key. So this one here, make sure you copy it and make sure you copy it, because we're going to be pasting it right here in the terminal to avoid any errors. Paste it here. And then you're going to give a space for the next one. And what's the next one? The next one is the Stripe publishable key. So still copy it, paste it here, and then equal to, we're going to get the value from the env, the Stripe publishable key. So this one here. Please do copy it, and then We're going to paste it here and you can execute. Now your remote edge function is going to be able to read these environment variables and you're good to go. Okay, so now we have set the environment variables. Let's come here to the application and I'm just going to close, or we're going to create a new file for Stripe. So right here in the lib, let's create a stripe.ts file. And actually, before we go on to fill this file with live, we need to just double check the documentation here, the Stripe export documentation. And here you would know more on how to set it up, but we see the installation command. We need to install this library. So copy it, open up your terminal, and you can paste it here and run the installation. So while the installation is running, we can proceed. The next thing we need to do is to wrap our entire stack. So right here, the underscore layout with the provider. So I'm just going to cut the stack that we have here. And here we're going to have the Stripe provider, which should be imported from Stripe React Native, and paste everything here. We do have an error because we need to pass the publishable key. So here, let's have our publishable key. And we know it's coming from process.env, and we can open the env file and copy the name. So the Stripe publishable key and dot, we paste it here. It could be undefined, so we use the exclamation mark to tell Typescript to relax. And once we have that, we can now proceed with this file. So we're going to be going through a couple of steps here. And the first step is to set up the payment sheet. That's the first thing. And the second thing we are going to do, we're going to be displaying the form to the user. So you can just, I'm just writing it here for documentation. So open Stripe checkout form. This is what we're going to do. So let's start with the first one, the setup payment sheet. So we're going to export const. So we can call it export, setup Stripe payment sheet. It's going to be equal to this function, but this is going to take in the total amount. Okay, we need the total amount, which is of type number, like this. Now we need to call our edge function to get the payment intent and the public key. So I'll drop the comment here. We need to fetch payment intent and public shable key from server. So let's have a function for that. So here const, we have the fetch Stripe, maybe keys, I think that name. So maybe fetch Stripe keys. It's going to be equal to this async function, and the function we're going to be using here is going to also take in the total amount, because that's how we configured our edge function. And here we can invoke, so we get data error. So const data error, just as we use the Supabase library, equal to await Supabase, which should be imported from the Supabase file. And then we have dot functions, don't forget the S, and you have dot invoke. Now this needs the name, and if you open up the Explorer, you would see right here the Supabase functions and the Stripe-checkout. That's the name of our function. So Stripe-checkout. And this takes in a body. So we have this object here, and here we'll have the body, and which is going to be an object, and we pass the total amount, because that again is how we set up our edge function. We could just have a check for error. So we can say here if error, then we are going to just throw a new error message. Otherwise, we can return the data. So now we're going to call this fetch Stripe keys here. So const, I'll bring all of these in, and let's double check the payment intent publishable key right here in the function. Here where we have our response, you see we have returned payment intent. So it should actually match here, payment intent. And the same, what did we call it? We called it public key, not publishable key. So here we should also have it as public key. Okay, so now we're just going to check what if we don't have the payment intent or there is no public key. Let's go on and throw this error. Otherwise, we are going to await the init payment sheet. So let's await the init payment sheet, which will come from Stripe. And this is going to take object or params, as you see here. The first is the merchant display name. And I'll just give this code with lari here. So this is what the user would see. It could be your brand name. And then you must pass the payment intent client secret, which is now going to be equal to the payment intent that comes from our Edge function. And finally, optionally, you can have this billing details collection configuration, which is an object. So I'll have name here, and name is going to be always. I just want to take the name and the phone, and this is going to be as collection mode here. And again, also the phone is optional, just depends on your business, but in this case, I want to get it. And if you just inspect this collection mode, you see it's an enum type with automatic, never, so you can say collection mode dot, always, however you like. So the next step is the second step, which we are going to open the payment form. So let's also have a function, export const, the open Stripe checkout here. And this is now going to say const error is equals to present payment sheet. So I'll bring this in, but I won't pass any object of configuration here. And also this should be imported from Stripe. Now this is going to give us this error if we don't init payment sheet. Okay, that's when we are going to see this error here. But if we make sure we call the setup Stripe payment sheet function first, then we can just come here and return boolean. So we're going to return true here. So it's important the way we call these functions. Again, the other functions should be called first. So let's npm start our application to have it up and running, and then we can try to call these functions in the cat page, which is the page where we, where we handle our checkout. So I'm just going to hit I and refresh the application here. Cool. So let's come over to the cat page, which is the app cat page here. And if you scroll down, you would see where we handle our checkout. So somewhere around here. Yeah, so here, that's where we have the handle checkout. And we're going to call this right inside the try block, okay? Because we want to do it before we create an order in our backend. But first going to await the, what did we call it? Is it setup Stripe payment sheet? Let's double check. Let's come back here and scroll up. Yeah, so that is the setup Stripe payment sheet. So we need to call it first. I'll paste it here, and then I will import it. But the total price is not going to just be like that. We need to call math.floor and pass the total price times 100. And then the next step, we are going to have our const result is going to be equal to await open Stripe checkout. And we know that the results could be boolean. So we're going to say if we don't have any results, we're going to show this alert and we're going to return because we don't want to create an order in our database. So this is the order. We call this first to set up the payment sheet. And if it's successful, then this result should be true. And then we can create an order. Okay, so let's try it out. Just refresh the application to make sure that everything is fine and good, no errors. And provide your email. I'll provide my tests at testemail.com and also provide my password. And hit on sign in. Network request failed. Okay, so it fails actually because we are still, at least for me, I am still making use of the local. So if we come to the env, you see here I still have the local setup here. So what's going to happen, I want to use the remote, so I'll uncomment it out, and then I'm going to comment these ones in. And I have to refresh or rebuild the application to make sure everything gets high. So we want to try this out, but we want to make sure we are trying it with our remote database, and we're not trying it with our local Supabase instance, okay? So refresh, wait for a moment for it to come up, then we can add an item to cart. So I am already authenticated. Let me look for maybe the Samsung, because I'm sure at least there's an item here. Add one of it to cart, and then let's come over to the cart page, and right here on the cart page we can check out. So let's hit on checkout and wait for a moment. Now we see our form pops up and we can fill in the form. And if you check here, you would see that we have the phone number and the name, and that's why Stripe is asking us, or asking the customer, to provide the phone number. So I'm just going to provide a dummy number here. Not quite sure how many digits, but you get the idea. Just provide a dummy phone number, and for the, okay, I need to add one more. And then for the name of the card, I will provide my name code with Larry, so as the customer here. And for the card number 4242, so this is just a default. And for the year, we can just go with not really a default for the card, sorry. It's a test card given to us by Stripe, and for CVV, any number of your choice. Now you see the amount $5.99, which is the price for the Samsung, and you see payment successful. We actually have a warning here, and you now see the order has been created successfully in our database. Let's inspect this, and it says that we did not provide the return URL field in the payment init payment sheet. So actually it needed the return. So somewhere here, yep, the init payment sheet, we can just provide the return URL. What will I actually specify? I'm just going to specify the home page for the return URL. And once you're done here, let's come over to the documentation and come over to the Stripe dashboard here. And you can just refresh to see the new payment, $5.99. And here we see the payment. So $5.99, you can inspect the payment. And here it loads up for me. You see more details, you see the customer, and you see more details about the payment right in your dashboard. Now, we're going to do something. We want to link Stripe customers. So that's what we're going to be doing next. If you have any issues, please do let me know. Okay, so what are we doing next? We can now build our users. We can create orders, all those beautiful stuff. Now, I want us to be able to create a Stripe customer, and this is going to enable us to keep track of user invoices and total amount a user has spent over time in our application. So let's start up our application on local, because we need to test our Edge function. So for that, we're not going to be using the remote. We're going to start here. So I'll comment this back in, which is our local credentials, and comment the remote credentials out. Okay, so now we have done this, we need to start up a project. So npx Supabase start, which is going to start up our container, Supabase containers. So it uses, as we said previously, Docker to manage our application locally here on our machine. So you see here it's spinning up the containers that it needs, and once it is done, we should see the credentials output right here in our terminal, and here we see the credentials. So in case you, for some reason, you lose the credentials and you want to output the credentials, again, the command is npx Supabase status, and this is going to show you the credentials right here. Now, I want us to go to the studio so that we can see the current state of what we have over there. So we're going to be copying the studio URL from here. If you scroll up, you would see the studio URL, or you can command click. I will just copy and come over to the browser, open up a new tab and paste it right here. So now we see welcome to your project, thank you. We need to come over to the table editor here, and if you come to the user table, you would see the different columns. Now we need to add a new column, which is going to help us here. So click on this plus, and you can give it the name of Stripe underscore customer underscore ID. And the type of this is going to be a text. So choose type text here. And every other thing here should remain the same. The constraints, make sure you allow nullable. Okay, so make sure you allow for nullable. And once you're happy with everything, you can click on save. Now we have this column successfully created. But this was on our machine, it's not on the remote database. We need to somehow sync what we have locally to what we have on our Supabase remote. So let's come over to the IDE to apply the migration. And over here in the terminal, we need to clear what we have currently and run a new command. So the command is npx supabase db, and then the next is diff, and then -f, after which you can specify the name, so I'll just give it a new stripe field, any name of your choice, and I'll just expand this so that we can see it in full. So this is what we need, and then you can execute. Okay, so this is gonna do its thing, connect to your local database. We are seeing the steps here, and then it's creating a shadow database. At the end, we expect to see a migration file, which is gonna give us an SQL command automatically for us, so we don't need to know SQL to continue with this. And once it is done, we can now push what we have to what we have remotely. So these are the steps. It's now setting up the initial schema, seeding the globals from rows SQL, applying the migration, and then it's diffing the schemas. It's just doing its thing. Let's allow it to complete. Then we have the status, and here we have the output that it has finished the Supabase DB diff on the main branch main. So here we see the output. Okay, so let's check it out. Let's open the Explorer, and here if you come over to migration, you would see the new file here. So not this one, the next one here. So this is the SQL here, and it has the name, the new stripe field, which was the name that we gave it right here. So you see the command alter table public users, add this column, and it's of type text. Now let's push this to what we have remotely, and the command to do this, let's just clear our terminal over here, is the npx supabase, and then we have the db push command. So execute this, and then it's going to ask us to confirm. It's currently connecting, and here we have it. So we're going to confirm. Just hit enter. Automatically it's in Y for you, and now you see it has finished the Supabase DB push. You can confirm right here in your remote, not your local now. So just refresh, and if you come over to the user table, and you see we have the new Stripe custom ID column that has been added for us because we have applied the migration. Okay, so what do we want to do next? We need to start up our server. Let's start up the React Native application, and npm start here. Okay, so let's wait for it to start up, and then I'm going to hit I to open up the iOS simulator and also refresh here. Okay, so now this is going to start up our application, and then we can proceed. Okay, so I need to sign up because I don't have any user. So I'm just going to sign up with my test@test.com credentials, and also provide my password here, and then sign up. Okay, so we have successfully signed up, but you see here, I don't have any categories or products. You might have from previous, and we can confirm here. So what's going to happen is, this is our remote. So what's going to happen is I'm going to take some time on the local Supabase and create a category, and also create a product that we can use to test this out. So I'll take a pause now and create. If you don't have, you can also create, and we continue. Okay, so I have created this new gaming category and this PS5 product here. And if you check the browser, you see right here on the local Supabase, I created the category with all these properties, and also for the products that I linked to this category, which has these properties as well. And the image here is coming from Unsplash. So by Martin Cutler, this image that I am currently using right here. Okay, so let's come over to the project here, and we need to get started. Okay, so we need to create a new Supabase function. So right here in the functions, we're going to be creating one for Supabase so that we can create the Stripe customer. So here we're going to have this Supabase.ts. And let's take a look at the documentation to know how we can get started with doing this. So if we come to the browser here, I have already opened up the Edge function documentation and the guide for integrating with Supabase Auth. So please come here. So this section, and we are going to focus on the auth context. You can read more about it here. And basically, we want to see here that this is being called in Deno serve. So we're going to copy all of these here to see how we can create this web-based client. And then right here, we're going to create a function. So export const, maybe get or create Stripe customer for Supabase user. So let me have the Supabase user here. It's going to be equal to an async function that's going to take in the request, which is of type request. And here we have the function. So inside here, we're going to paste what we copied from the documentation. And you might be tempted, okay, let's bring in the create client. You might be tempted to bring it in from at Supabase, but this is going to fail. So please don't do this. Is Deno, as you can see here. So we need to copy this right here from documentation. You see how the create client is being imported, or the library where it's being imported from. So we're going to do the same, and we need to paste it here. So this gives us the Supabase client. And with the Supabase client, we can now get the current user. So const data user is going to be equal to, and then we have await the Supabase client .auth.get user, which is going to give us the user, the customer that is calling this function. So our authenticated user. And what we can do is to check if there is no user, let's throw an error, and then let's log the user to the console. So console.log user like this. Okay, so we need to call this function, and that is going to be in the index.ts right here before the payment intent here. Just right here, we're going to await, and then we'll paste the function, import it, and pass the request. But we're going to add .ts, so we're going to import it like this. Okay, so now we have the function here. Let's save, and here we're going to add this to cart. And actually, before we test this out, let's make sure that you have your your local Supabase up and running. So make sure you have npx Supabase and then start up and running. Once you have it up and running, you can now have the next command to save the function. So functions save, and then you have -env-file.env and the name, which is stripe-checkout. So then you can call the function, and now you see it's saving the function and you're good to go. So now you have the function up and running. Let's try it out and have our console open. So I'm going to come over to the cart page and hit on checkout. So then we'll wait a second. The form should come up, the payment form. Or maybe I go over to the other terminal, and here we see the user, and now the form pops up. So if you check, you're going to see the credentials about the user, the ID, very much important, this ID here, and you can see other details. So we're going to be making use of this ID to because we know this is the user, but now we're going to search for the user in our Supabase database. So we're going to say const, and we can get error data. So let's destructure data error. It's going to be equal to, and now we're going to await the Supabase client, and then we say from users. So from our own users table now, we want to select everything. So we're going to say .select, and then we're going to pass star. And we want to add the where clause, so where the ID is going to be equal to user ID, and then we need a single document .single. So again, we're just going to check right here. If we have an error, we're going to throw a new error, and then I'm going to use backtick, and yeah, error fetch user, the error.message. And if we have the user, then we can continue here. So we're going to have the console.log so that we can console.log the user. So just like this data, because we know data is going to be the user. Okay, and then let's try it out again. Hit on checkout, and now you see the user. So this is our own user that is being returned, the user that is calling this function with all these properties over here. So now we are sure that we are getting data. We're going to have a check. So if data.stripe on the customer underscore ID, they want to return the data.customer ID. So this here you see is null for this user. That's what we are trying to return if this user has it. Otherwise, we are now going to create a Stripe customer. And how do we create a Stripe customer? We're going to say const customer is going to be equal to stripe.customers.create, and we're going to pass the user email. And to bring in Stripe, let's come over to the index. And here where we have Stripe, we're going to export the Stripe so that we can now import it right here and make use of it. So here, let's quickly import Stripe, and I'll just scroll up to add the .ts here. So we have Stripe, and we can also pass a metadata object here. So here we can have the metadata object, and what we pass here, we can pass the Supabase user ID, which is equal to user ID. And then we have the customer here. That's not all we're going to do. We are now going to be running an update to update in our Supabase. So this code, bring it in, you see from users, we are running an update operation with this key, and then it's not going to be null. So that's what we're trying to do here. We can return the customer ID. Okay, so this is what we have going for us, and we can try it out. But before we do, let's just make sure we log the customer to the console so that we can be sure of the properties that this customer has. But I'll take off the ID. We want to log the whole customer object. So let's go again, open up the terminal and hit on checkout. And we have an error. So I think we refresh the application. Maybe, I don't know, saving the request. Let me just refresh. And we can try it again. So I'm just going to go back to the product and add the product to cart again. So I'll click on the PS5, add it to cart, and then come over to the cart page and let's check out. And we still get the same error. Now, what's changed in our code was the Stripe import. So what's going to happen is I'm going to change it, at least the way we are importing it here. We're going to do what we have in the index here. So come here to the index, and we're going to copy this Stripe. I don't know why, it is currently failing. So I'll just copy this and come back to the Supabase, and here I'll paste it in. But rather than import like this, I'll take it off and then come back to the index and copy and paste it here so we can have our function back up and running. Save this, and we should not have any error, hopefully. So now let's hit on checkout again, and you see now the function is called and we see the customer. So the issue was with the way we are importing Stripe, and now you can inspect and you see that this customer here has this ID, and it's the ID that we are using to update over here. So let me get rid of the console.log, and now we ascertain everything is fine. Right here in the index, let's get the results that we're going to get from here. So we're going to say const, and here we can get the customer, and the customer is going to be equal to awaiting the function. We have sent the customer to the console. So here, and it's the ID actually. So right here, where we have the, we're going to have this ephemeral key, and it's hard to pronounce or spell. So this key, we want to create the key, and I will bring this in. Okay, and this is going to take in the customer object here, and also the API version, just like this. Okay, so now we have the key that we have created. We want to link it to the customer. We are going to come over to the payment intent that we are creating and pass the customer here. And I'll just leave this note that this will link the payment to the customer. So this will link the payment to the customer. Just leave this note here. And then the key, we need to now return it back as a response as well as a customer. So here we're going to return the key, but you see .secret, and here we're also going to return the customer. And why do we have an error? If I check, okay, expected comma, so we'll add the comma here, and everything is fine. So we have our response. Now let's come over to the front end, to application, the cart page, which is a page that helps us to check out. But actually you see here, it's the Supabase helpers, because we're just calling the setup Stripe payment sheet. So let's come over to the lib, and here we have the Stripe. Yeah, so Stripe, yeah, that's it. And right here we have the fetch API keys, and you know that we are returning these now updated from the index. So right here in the index, we want to now get the Emperor key, and we also want to make sure that we are getting back the customer. So here, let's bring in the customer. Okay, so now we have these right here in the init payment sheet. We are going to pass the customer as well as the key. So here we're going to pass the, just come back here, and then pass the customer ID, which is going to be equal to the customer. And then we can pass the customer Emperor key secret, which is now going to be equal to the key that we are passing back from the front end, from the back end, sorry. And we can also update this to be collection mode.always. Yeah, just like this. And this is the only change we need to do here. And actually our application is broken. Payment sheets could not be found within the project. And I think is this, yeah, so this collection mode, I'll revert the change, save, and our application is fine. Okay, so now we have our application good, up and running. Let's open the terminal in case we have an error. Yeah, this error we have here was the error from previous. So now let's hit on checkout. We see the function is being called, and here you see the form is now here, and you see that here we also have this checkbox. So I'm going to provide the dummy phone number here. Hopefully I get it correct this time, number of digits. And then for the name of the card, I'll go with code with lari. And the card number, I'll just go with 42424242, the default. And then the expiry, just go with the future, and then the CVV. And you see here, this code with lari that we are seeing here is not the one that we imputed right here, is the one for this merchant display name. And you can save this for later and hit on pay. Now this is gonna not a valid URL. Okay, so this is from this return URL. I'm just gonna get rid of it actually. Not a valid needed, and save. So let's try again. Now we have gotten rid of it. I'm just going to clear this and hit on checkout again. Wait for the form, and quickly I'm just going to fill in the phone number. So the same dummy phone number here, just get rid of that. And then the name, I'll just go with Larry this time around, and the card number same, so 424242. Stripe gives us card number we could test with, and the same for the year, CVV, any number. And now you see it's code with Larry, it's not Larry. I'm going to check the checkbox and hit on pay. Now this is present payment. You see the payment is successful, and we see that we are still creating the order in our own database. And if we check our Stripe dashboard here, we see the transactions. If you come here, you're going to see a Stripe customer is being created. Now you see it's succeeded here. If you click on this payment, you see here that this is a customer, and you see the insight, how much was spent, the customer ID, when you had this customer, the payments that this customer has made, and you get all this information right here, which is super helpful. So it's not working. I did check around and found an issue right here for the user table. You see here, we don't have the Stripe customer ID, and that's because of our auth policy. We just have one policy, and if we check, is this enable read access for all users? So this is the policy that we have. Now let's create a new policy for update. I'm gonna give it the name of enable update for auth users, so for authenticated users. And the policy command is going to be update, and for authenticated, that's the target row. And in this SQL, we're just going to select true or type true and then save the policy. So now with this policy created, we don't have it synced automatically to what we have in our remote. So if we come here, one way we can do it is by using the terminal here and running the diff command. I'll just open a new terminal here. Or we can do it by obviously coming over to the remote and making sure that we also create the policy right here in the user auth table. Now we're going to use the npx supabase, the db diff command, so we can have a feel for it. And then -f, the policy name. I'll go with update -users -rls and execute. Now this policy here, we know is going to generate a migration file for us that we can use to push our changes. So Supabase is doing its thing. It's creating the shadow database. And once it generates the file for us, we can now have the db push command to push what we have locally and make sure it is in sync to what we have on our remote. So now it looks like it's done. It's seeding the globals, applying the migration, and you see here it is finished. We can double check, come to the Supabase folder, and here in Supabase you have the migrations, and now we have the last migration here, which is this recent migration, and it contains this SQL command. Now let's run the Supabase db push command. So I'll clear and run the npx supabase db push here. Now it's going to ask me to confirm. I would say yes, hit enter, and now it applies the migration and it is done. And now you see we have two auth policies with the other one for updates. Okay, so what are we going to do next? This is basically everything that we need to do. This is the change that we need. We need to make sure that our application is running. You need to make sure that the function is running your npx supabase stat. So you can just double check that you have your function up and running with this command. So npx supabase function save, you attach the env and then the name of the function, which is Stripe checkout in my case. And I'm just going to kill this other terminal here and add this product to cart because I have my application up and running. And then let's give it another trial, come to the cart and hit on checkout. So this is going to, you see, it brings up the form, the payment form. And if you have some issues, you can double check your env. So right here, we have the Stripe publishable key. Now this Stripe publishable key, we are using it. If we do a fuzzy search in the application here, we are using it in the layout. Now, in case your Expo isn't able to build for you, you can just append the Expo public to this Stripe publishable key. So just like this, Expo underscore public and then underscore and the name. So this name here, we can copy it and use the same for our env, but I will be duplicating what we have here and paste it here. So the same, but just different keys here. And with this change, everything should be fine. You just quit and you know you need to restart your application so that it builds with the latest changes from the env. Now, this is just in case it doesn't work for you, and we have seen how we can publish or how we can push our env to remote. Okay, so I think it's npx supabase push or something like that for the environment variables. So let me add this to cart. And here, let's try again. open the cart page, and then hit on checkout. So this time around, I expect to see the user created. So this is the payment sheet, and then I'm going to provide again the dummy phone number. And after which, the name on the card, I'll go with Larry, the card number 4242. Just this is the dummy card we get from Stripe, the months and the year, and then any dummy CVV here. Now you see here, this checkbox, if we check this and we process this payment and everything is fine and good as it is, we see success and we see an error occurred while processing that payment. Now this is from our checkout from the cart page, because that's where we're handling it. And if we also check the Supabase here, we check the SQL editor, you would see right here, we should have the Stripe custom ID. And yes, we do have the Stripe custom ID here. So the error that I got, well, it should be coming in from somewhere in the cart. So maybe I made some changes there. So if I just come over to the cart.tsx route, and here the result, and if I double check, yes, I'm returning false. I was using for debugging purposes. You shouldn't have this error, so no action from your side. I'll set it to true. And then if I retry, I should see that over here, the card should now be saved, because this is a Stripe customer, and you see the card details is being saved, and now the user can pay without the need to input the card details again. And now if you double check, you can come over to the Stripe dashboard here, and this is going to load. Just give it a second for it to load. We should now see that this we created a Stripe customer, and now we have that link between Stripe and with our own user, as we are saving in the customer ID. That's the only thing we're saving in our database. So here, let's check the transactions and wait for it to load up to load the recent transactions. And now it is done. You see here we have the 2 transactions that succeeded. We can inspect the one of these transactions here, and it takes us to the payments and the transaction ID. And you see right here the customer, which is this customer that we created or linked to Stripe. And if you click on the customer, it's going to take you to the Stripe customer page, which is this Stripe customer. You can see this customer spent 2,000 US because we did it twice. And you see the 2 transactions, 1,000, 1,000. And this can give you a very helpful way of tracking how much a specific user has spent on your product. And you see here with Stripe, we have a very handy way of even keeping the logs, the transactions, and all of these all of the transactions that the user has performed. Now we need to not forget to push our function to remote so that it works live. And we know the command for that is the npx supabase and then functions. Don't forget the S. And then we have deploy and the name of the function, which is the Stripe-checkout. Now you can verify. If you come over to the index here, you see the Stripe checkout, which is the name of the function. Then go on and execute this. And now it's going to bundle your function and download any dependency that it needs. It's deploying the function, and you see that the function has now been deployed. So you can test run your application now on live, and your application should work fine. Let's continue building out our application.